Blog Talk Radio.
Changes your life. A band that reaches out to you when you most need it to. A band that absolutely has a fundamental effect on the way you see things. A band that hears you in your hour of need. Tonight, we're going to talk about that band, because that band is Four Cowboys from Hell. That's right. They were the greatest band, the greatest heavy metal band in recent history, a band that reignited an entire genre when the critics said it was all but dead. Ladies and gentlemen, 411 Mania, the Music Zone presents a career retrospective of Pantera. Can you tell I'm excited? Because, God, I love this band. When I was in high school, and I was having trouble with the parents, trouble with the kids at school, just finding a place where I could fit in, and there was none to be had, I got hip to the Cowboys from Hell. That's right. I believe it was 91 or 92. Jennifer Friedman, my cousin, her and her boyfriend and his friends took me to the Hotel Leningrad, which was not a hotel, nor was it in Leningrad, but I digress. They took me to the Hotel Leningrad, which was a club in Mineola, Long Island, and it was an industrial club, but they would play the sets of what was then modern hard rock and heavy metal and some punk and ska. They played Fishbone. They played Sepultura. They played Ice-T's thrash metal band, Body Count. Body Count was, in fact, in the house. They played the Butch Vig... Hang on, I'm getting to you. They played the Butch Vig remix of Shamrocks and Shenanigans. Boom, shellac, lock, boom. But what had a most profound effect on me was a song called Fucking Hostile. And when I heard that song, it spoke to me. Because all that anger and all those feelings of isolation that I was going through, I heard it in that song, and I went and I got Vulgar Display of Power, and that whole album spoke to me and changed how I would see music for years. To this very day, the kind of music that I listen to comes from first having heard Fucking Hostile way back in the early 90s. Hello. I am Mark Radulich, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. And this is the 411 Music Zone podcast. And of course, I can't do the 411 Music Zone podcast without one of its mainstays. It's writers. One of the guys who writes weekly for the site. He writes the Metal Hammer of Doom. Here he is. He's like half my age. And I'd like to tell him he does this podcast with Grandpa. Here he is. They call him the Metal Coop, Mr. Robert Cooper. How you doing?
Not too bad. You know, Pantera is one of those bands that no matter how my musical tastes change, there's always a little spot of love for Pantera. Like, unlike you, when I was in high school, I was listening to like stuff like Rise Against, and then I started moving into metal through metalcore. I know, not exactly pretty. But Pantera was actually the earliest metal band I listened to besides, like Metallica. So I had an uncle, my Uncle Jerry. He would blast Anthrax, which was actually didn't blast that much, but he blasted some of it, Metallica and Pantera. And he would preach the love of Dimebag and Phil Anselmo until probably the day he dies. Yeah,
you know what I was listening to? You know what I was listening to when Pantera came out, aside from the Black Album, which, if you lived in a white neighborhood, you listened to the Black neighborhood. You listened to the Black Album. That's just the way it was. Prior to discovering Pantera, I was listening to Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood, Paula Abdul's Forever Your Girl, and Nirvana's Nevermind. Now, I have nothing bad to say about Nirvana, but, that was kind of my musical taste at the time. It was hair metal, Nirvana, which was his own category because it was so new, and girls who sang pop. So there you have it. See, Pantera had a profound effect on my life.
Yeah. They definitely helped on mine. It's funny because I don't hang around my uncle very much at all. He's actually a little intimidating. But I seem to have gotten a little bit of his musical taste, just a little, because most of my music has come after I got a computer my senior year of high school. Oh yeah, I've gotten about 30 albums over Christmas break, and I'm probably getting another 20 more, all for probably $60 total.
So let's talk a little bit about Pantera, the band, and of course, if you don't know anything about Pantera and you're listening to this for the first time, just trying to figure out what this band's all about. Well, aside from that, I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt here. If you're 12 and you've never heard of Pantera, they were, in the formation that I care about, Phil Anselmo on vocals, brothers Vinnie Paul and Dimebag Darrell, formerly Diamond Darrell, on drums and guitar, respectively, and Rex on bass. They had actually gotten together in between 81 and 87 as a sort of a hair metal project with Midland success. They got rid of their singer in 1987 and brought on Phil Anselmo, and they kept up a little bit of the glam until they released Cowboys from Hell, which was a departure from that in 1989. And we're going to break here momentarily and hear the title track, a little bit of the title track from the album that really started it all. It separated. It was a line in the sand. They said this was the old Pantera, this is the new Pantera, and they were making a statement with this song. They were going from glam to Cowboys from Hell.
You're gone and you're
time you heard that, Robert, what was your reaction?
Oh, shit. I mean, there's a real visceral energy to that song that just kind of, because at first when it starts up with the quieter, which makes me want to sing that One Winged Dove song. Yeah, don't know why. Like, you get that, and it kind of builds, and then you just get fucking headbanging, thrash around, everything. Fucking metal. And a bitch playing Guitar Hero, I must say.
Yeah, I think I remember having a rough time with that as well. But I think what always stands out to me as far as the Cowboys from Hell album, and look, I'm sure there's somebody who's, the comic guy in terms of music out there who's just like, no, it was this band, not that band. But you know what? This is my show, and my perspective back in 91, 92, when I was in high school and I was hip to metal, was that metal, the reason why they said, rock was dead, metal was a dead genre, was for exactly the reasons I had stated before. When you thought about metal, it was hair metal. That was it. While death metal existed and grindcore existed, they were subgenres that spoke to a very niche audience. They were not in the mainstream, and so, for most critics, they might as well have not existed. Tree falls in the forest, no one's there to see it, et cetera, et cetera. Cowboys from Hell was really the first album that I knew of that separated itself from what was then known as modern heavy metal. It was a far cry from your Motley Crues, your Poisons, your Bon Jovis, God bless you, Pat Mullins, your Stripers, all of them.
You like Striper?
He really does.
I
plugged this show on Sunday, and I said, the greatest heavy metal band of all time, Pantera. And I had Harris who said, but, why are you dissing out on Megadeth? And I went, push it off, Megadeth, Pantera, greater. And then Pat chimed in with Striper, and I had to end the show at that point. But Megadeth's my number 2 band, but really Striper, God, I said we need to make here because Nick wants Striper. He will defend Striper. Yeah, 777. To hell with it. Now listen, the significance of Pantera to me, in all seriousness, so we can get on with this, is that it was the first of what would come after it, which was a slew of bands that represented the new heavy metal, and part of what provided the base to kind of shoulder all these bands on their back was a single that they had put out, a video that was played pretty often back in the day. It's a fairly long song. We're only going to hear a little part of it now, but this particular song is what brought some notoriety to Pantera, and it made people stand up and take notice. That song is, of course, Cemetery Gates. insanity and drugs did him in. Phil Anselmo had a hell of a voice.
Oh, yeah. I was actually surprised when I first heard the songs. You know, I'm used to Phil and his old didgeridoo voice. You know, just kind of... Yeah, I heard him talk on the Get Thrash documentary. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's amazing. I heard him talk. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's like fucking octabass. That's how low his voice is.
Yeah, he definitely sounds like one of the special kids.
Yeah, I tell you.
He sounds like he's on ether. I'm back to New Orleans and heroin.
Yeah, but hey, at least he's manly. Yeah, I couldn't believe he was hitting like falsettos. I remember was it a few years ago at the community college. I was telling someone, hell yeah, man, Cemetery Gates, telling someone it's really, really high falsetto, and everybody's like, no, he doesn't. He can't do that. I'm like, dude.
See, that's amazing to me that people wouldn't know that just because, and I guess it makes sense because what people know Phil Anselmo now for might be some later Pantera, you know, where he was doing death metal vocals for most of it, you know, or Down, where he's not really hitting those high notes anymore. Yeah, I think Cowboys and like a little bit of Vulgar, I think that's really the last hurrah for Phil Anselmo's impersonation. But the thing about Cemetery Gates that people need to understand is that it was like it marked kind of the transition from the sort of Iron Maiden power metal / Poison, Motley Crue, hair metal in genres into what would be the new metal. And when I say the new metal, I'm talking about bands that came out in the early 90s, mostly from the Roadrunner label, but from other places as well. And so you had Pantera, you had Sepultura, you had Machine Head, from a more rock rap / punk area. You had Biohazard, Life of Agony. These were all the bands that sort of carried the banner, along with some, Anthrax had at that point just gotten rid of Joey Belladonna, and they brought in John Bush. So you had a good core group of new bands that were coming out and saying, and planting a flag and saying, you know what, we're still here. White Zombie at that point, I think, had been made famous by Beavis and Butthead, and they were out there before Rob Zombie became a solo artist. So, Pantera is not just important to me personally, but I think they need to be recognized as sort of the godfathers of the resurgence of metal back in the 90s. What would you say about that, Robert? Yeah, I think they definitely brought something to the mainstream rather than the hair metal, which is what we were all getting bombarded. I act like I wasn't born in '91. God, I was like a freshman in high school. God, I mean, it makes me feel younger. But it brought something different because before, like, probably the most not metal thing you'd get would be maybe, like Metallica or Megadeth, which, I love them, but they're not quite as heavy as Pantera, usually. But Pantera brought, just balls to the wall. Well, not except balls to the wall, but balls to the wall, just like heavy, vicious. They had a bite to them, something that hair metal did not usually have. Right. And even some of the more, and even some of the bands that were from the 80s that at that point become sort of arena bands that had an edge to them. So, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer was still out there. Slayer's sort of the universal constant. Yeah, they don't stop being Slayer. No. We're not doing a career retrospective of Slayer because it would be an hour and a half of the same song. No, I'm just kidding. Not really. But I love Slayer. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, we could pull it off. But Pantera really they look different. They brought a different attitude, something that people hadn't seen before, and they were coming in a place where a lot of the old guard were moving up a level. So like I said, Metallica being a really good example of this. Metallica was moving on to arenas. And so where were those bands that were going to play the clubs and sort of the just under the arena places, just under the Coliseum? So in New York, you had like the Roseland Ballroom or Irving Plaza, about 1,000 people. Who were you going to book? You would book your Panteras, your Typo Negatives, your Sepulturas, etc. So What Robert and I did for this podcast is we kind of got together and we cobbled a list of some of our favorite songs from each one of these albums. Not too many because I don't have 5 hours to do this, but just enough to give you a flavor of each album. Funny thing about this is that, like, in the first couple of albums, we both picked, we both picked a lot for, one list, and then towards the end we were one song apiece. It tells you a lot about how this podcast is going to go. But why don't you tell us about one of the 2 songs that you picked, which was Domination, which I had actually forgotten how good that song was. But Cowboys from Hell and Cemetery Gates, those were the 2 big songs from this. What about Domination made that stand out to you?
I guess let me just backtrack a second. I'd actually, before we started it, I'd never heard Cowboys from Hell all the way through. Because I just never really sought it out. I was just kind of happy with the lead singles. But, in listening to the album, I liked it, but I think this might be a little sacrilege, but I thought it had a little bit of an overrated quality to it. I was expecting something a little faster. It was great. It's had a nice mid groove to it. I was expecting faster, which is the main reason why I picked Domination, because that was thrashier than thrash for the most part. That was something that made Kerry King go, I think we played that song that fast.
All right, so let's go ahead and hear a little bit of it now, and we'll talk a little bit more about it after. Back in 1994, when after Pantera had released Far Beyond Driven, they had graduated from the smaller club gigs to coliseums. Specifically, back in my home state of New York, they played the Nassau Coliseum, and I want to say that was the show that they did with Biohazard, but what they used to do with Domination, and it's funny, it's not one of those songs that I remembered initially, but back then they used to play it all the time. Obviously, it was a mainstay of their set, but due to its length and some other reasons, which I couldn't tell you what it was, they actually used to split Domination with Hollow. So they'd start with Domination, and then they'd go into Hollow, and it was about 10 minutes long. And I know this because I actually have the bootleg concert CD of that show. And I remember that he would actually make an announcement about it, okay, we're gonna play Domination, we're gonna split that motherfucker with Hollow, and here we go. But I'll tell you that beginning there, Pantera was one of those bands. Was the first band that I went to go see where there was a mosh pit, and Domination was one of those songs where if you didn't have your wits about you, you were gonna be holding your brains.
Yeah. Actually, I'd never heard about the Hollow and Domination. That's neat because those are 2 totally opposite ends of the stick.
And we're going to hear Hollow in just a few minutes, but a little bit more about Domination. What do you like about it?
Oh, like I said, I think it's honestly the most aggressive song off the album, besides maybe Cowboys from Hell. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's just fast. It feels like an old thrasher. It kind of gives the point to where a lot of people say Pantera are thrash. If they were to give one song towards that, it'd be this. I don't really think they're that. I don't think they're thrash, honestly. But this is a song that really has that thrash attitude and speed. Something nice when you consider that most of metal up to then had been hair metal with a little thrash sprinkled in, maybe one or two death metal songs.
Well, Domination is definitely one of those songs where you can feel Phil Anselmo's influence on the band. Phil Anselmo was a punk rock guy. I don't know how many people know that, but he had a lot of roots in punk rock, and you would see it years later when Pantera broke up and he was doing different side projects, Down being the most famous one, but the little-known side project's got 2 albums of its own called Superjoint Ritual.
Superjoint Ritual.
That's right, and another band that I've seen. And Superjoint Ritual was sort of his nod to punk rock music, and you can hear a lot of Domination in the Superjoint Ritual albums.
Yeah, I've never actually listened to Superjoint, but like I said, my uncle loved them because some guy in Pantera was in them. Though I don't think he's ever listened to Down, which disappoints me.
Okay. Every time we do one of these podcasts, I send you a link, and today's link is "Fuck Your Enemy" by Superjoint Ritual. That's your homework. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to go look into that. Actually, from Dan Haggerty, the guy I was telling you about, who used to be the metal writer for the site. Mm-hmm. I think he used to talk about how Pantera's old sound with Phil Anselmo's, was it Low for Ex-Hoarder and Demolition Hammer coming into Pantera. Okay, so this last song that we're going to play off the Cowboys from Hell album is another one of Robert's pick. And Robert, I'm going to let you introduce it. It's called The Art of Shredding. Now, why did you pick this song? Well, I think the title says it all. It's just The Art of Shredding. It's mostly a guitar feature for Dimebag. Okay. And if there's one thing that we know about Pantera, it's that even if there's a shitty song, Dimebag did a good job. So, first of all, there's no such thing as a shitty Pantera song. Well, that isn't true either. But all right, so you picked this because because the feature of it is Dimebag's guitar work. So let's go ahead and give it a little bit of a listen. That's purely an instrumental, correct? No, there's some singing. There's vocal parts, but most of it is, like I said, most of it's a Dimebag feature with some singing. Yeah. It's funny, it's like, so the major feature of this is Dimebag, and the first thing you hear is a big bass chord. Well, he's got to set the beat up. That's one awesome thing that Rex Brown does. Rex was a solid bass player. Yeah, he was actually in Down for, I think, an album. I thought he was in Down for more than just one album, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Okay, I'm not sure. So I have been a part of a lot of different websites that wrote about music in one degree or another, and I've now never been in them for very long, but I was a part of a good amount of them. And there's always a conversation that takes place, especially among big music fans, of what is a perfect album in your mind. I always cite Nirvana's Nevermind or Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction as examples in my mind of perfect albums, and albums where there was not a bad song. And it just from start to finish, the album made sense. And this next one, like I said, this was the album that I discovered first from Pantera. This was Vulgar Display of Power. And everything about this album was fantastic. It came out in 1992, so I'm pretty sure I was in 10th grade at the time. And it has a great album cover. It's a close-up of a guy getting punched right in the face. I haven't seen anything like it since, other than like MMA when they, sometimes they'll show like a still shot of someone getting punched, but it was just when you're a high school kid full of testosterone and just angry at the world for one reason or another, this was your soundtrack. And when I say an album that spoke to me from a place where I really needed to be heard and understood, this was the one that did it. And I'll tell you, to me, a good metal album, and we've talked about this in a previous podcast, a good metal album has songs on it that you could use as walkout music.
Oh, yeah.
And just like Cowboys from Hell, the very first song on Vulgar Display of Power is probably some of the best walkout music you're ever going to hear in your life. And even has a great title. It's called Mouth for War. That song has stood up for like the last 20 years, stood the test of time. It is still great, and there are very few songs I can think of that match its power and aggression.
Yes. I agree wholeheartedly.
All right,
yeah,
so what do you... Go ahead.
I think because I listened to this album first, I actually got this album from a used bookstore across from my high school for $5. And yeah, most of my CDs are fucking bargain bin prices for above bargain bin quality. But I think this was the reason I was disappointed with Cowboys, because I listened to this, and this is mostly like, that kind of fast, intense listen, whereas Cowboys is kind of more of a mid-paced, kind of more mid-paced. And this album, I think, rather than Cowboys, because Cowboys I chose The Art of Shredding because that was the last song that stood out to me, but there were no songs besides the three we picked that I could go, you know what, I could talk like for hours about this. This album, like every song, I could talk for at least a good 10 minutes for. They're all great, but this song right here, one of the best intro songs. Like I don't know if I want to say ever, but it's close. It is close to ever, because it introduces you to, this is Pantera, this is what they do, love it or leave it.
Yeah, it was amazing. It's interesting, if you hear, because I did the same thing. I heard Vulgar Display of Power pretty much when it came out. I went to a lot of the shows on that tour. The very first show, very first concert, everything else was actually Pantera and Crowbar. And to this day, I have a buddy of mine who continually references Crowbar when he talks about me.
I would love to see that show. Crowbar or like Pantera, if they went down a doomy path instead of a thrashy path.
Yes, it's also if they completely lost control of the buffet. Have you ever seen Crowbar? Those are some large men.
Oh yes. They're like what was it for Fear Factory for Mechanized when they had Gene Hoglan? I called them Fat Factory.
Yeah, well, Dino was not exactly thin either, but yeah, Crowbar are some large bald men. But yeah, they opened up. I want to say, actually, no. I think the first one, I take that back. The very first Pantera show I went to, the opening band was Sacred Reich, and they were promoting Vulgar Display of Power. So let's go ahead and now it said that they would play Domination and Hollow in kind of a mini medley. So this is Hollow. This is Hollow. Yeah, let's try that one more time. There we go. Well, you may not think so after hearing a song like that. What I was trying to explain was you had this sort of base in Cowboys from Hell of what metal was starting to turn into, and in Vulgar Display of Power, it really turned up the aggression. It was like, okay, we know kind of what our sound is now. We know what we want to be. Now let's be really, really angry with the same theme.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I don't. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, like this song. Actually, if you wouldn't have chosen this song, I would have chosen this song. Because the song, like, it has that quality. You know, it kind of makes you get the feels going on. You know, it kind of hits you hard. You're like, yeah, you know, I totally feel with this song. And then about halfway through the song, it's just like, brr. It's like, I am Phil Anselmo. This is really loud.
We talked a little bit before about the influence of punk rock on Pantera, and this, like I said, the very, very first song I ever heard by Pantera was fucking Hostile. That's what started it all for me. And to this day, you know, when I hear a metal song, you know, I'm still searching for that fucking Hostile quality. It's the best example I can give when I say they've really turned up the aggression in this, and it was just in the name, you know. It says it all right there, number one, in 2 words. But the other part about it is it was so in your face. It was very, very different from anything else, you know, at the time. I mean, you know, you Megadeth, Peace Sells, but who's buying? You know, Metallica, you know, these long names and longer songs and everything. And Pantera, 2 words, fucking Hostile. And that was all you needed to know.
Yeah, that is one thing Pantera did definitely keep throughout their whole careers. Pretty much simplicity. You know, the odd thing about it was, they would always save that one for. I mean, like I said, I've seen Pantera dozens of times now, from the Vulgar Display of Power tour and on. And fucking Hostile was always one of those songs where they would always save it for like an encore, or it was always later on in the set. It was not one of the ones that they would lead with. Well, because that's a song, like, you know, that is the, like, song that epitomizes aggression. And if you're going to do it, you're going to pop that out when the crowd's starting to get a little woozy, you know, a little tired from all the headbanging. No, you're going to pop that out, and they're going to get right back energized. Yeah.
And let me say this. I've been in a lot of mosh pits, you know, more mosh pits than I care to recount. A lot of shows that I've seen throughout my youth and early adulthood, and even as late as this past year. And almost every one of them that I went to, if there was a mosh pit, I was in it. And let me tell you what, I can't say they were all particularly violent. I mean, especially the ones since I've left New York. You know, outside of New York, the world is a bunch of pansies.
I'm sure we are.
But nothing is quite, other than Slayer, because nothing is more violent than a Slayer pit. But outside of Slayer, probably one of the most violent pits I've ever been involved with, ever, was when Pantera would break out fucking Hostile.
1, 2, 3, 4! Almost every day, you see me. I'm broken picture too. It's the attitude. If you can see yourself, you wish you want to kill. Your purple masturbate, promise to nauseate. Today I play the part of the parent. Not make a husband room for you to know about yourself. The lie makes you believe what's evil. It's making love and making friends and meaning got the wrong way. The right way to see, to bleed, to not be tough. It's true.
I could have let that entire song play, but
It's not long.
I'll tell you, you don't know, like, I've never been part of a riot, but I would imagine it's a lot like a fucking hostile pit. I mean, people just lose their freaking minds when that song used to come on.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking during the song, 3 things that are more dangerous than that pit: being on a stage in a Lamb of God show, that's one. Yeah, maybe a Cannibal Corpse pit, and being front row at a Mayhem concert.
All right, I'm not going to argue with you on any of those. But all right, so wrestling fans may recognize this next song, and I'm going to let Robert again talk about why he picked it. I didn't pick it. I picked Mouth for War and fucking Hostile, but he picked this next one. And you know, look, if you write for 411, 9 out of 10 times you're a wrestling fan, and so I'm sure that's one of the attractions to this song. I'll actually tell you that back in the day, there were actually people who were into metal who were not tremendously enthusiastic about Pantera. And this song was one of the reasons why. They would hear this and they just thought it was silly. They thought it was stupid. They didn't get it. It was too different than anything that they had heard before. And these guys were all older than I was. But that was sort of their impressions. Why don't you talk about Rob Van Dam's old walkout music, Walk?
Oh, yeah, this was his old walkout music. I totally forgot that. And then I think, didn't Avenged Sevenfold cover it? They did an okay job. Anyways, yeah, I could see why they would bitch, because this is more groove metal than anything, but it's such a killer groove. Like, to quote my Uncle Jerry, this is the most perfect riff ever. Like, ever. Oh, yeah, I've covered this song. I actually had a friend who, like, he was more into, like, alt rock and stuff, but he knew a few metal songs. He would play Pantera on an acoustic guitar with me singing. So we did a acoustic verse of Walk, and it was fucking amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I was talking about a little while ago. This song is simple. It's like 2, 3 chords, if that. It's very simple, to the point, but it's got enough to it to keep you going.
All right, so let's give it a little listen. Here's a little interesting tidbit, and I'm actually going to read this from the Wikipedia page. The riff for the song Walk is played in a time signature of 12/8. Dimebag Darrell had played the riff during a sound check while Pantera was touring for Cowboys from Hell, and the rest of the band loved it. Following this tour, the band returned home and found that some friends thought that rock stardom had gone to their heads. The lyrics for the song were inspired from these people's attitudes towards the band, and Anselmo's message to them was, take your fucking attitude and take a fucking walk with that. Keep that shit away from me. Ah!
That is awesome. So there is one thing that, like, I do love the song, but it is like, though it's simple, there is a certain dumbness to it. Like, it's just like, oh, you, I don't like you, still there for me, fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, this is not music. This is not Bach. This is not music, that is going to be terribly inspiring for, it's literally just aggression, That I think that was the attraction to me when I was a kid, was I wanted a song that reflected my attitude at the time, and this was
perfect
it.
for that.
Yeah, I mean, this was all testosterone, piss, and vinegar. Speaking of piss, we will get to that later.
Yes. But I just thought, I was thinking, I remember last time we were talking about, my love for slow things and doom. I think this song is definitely more proof of me liking the slow stuff, because there's like because you have time to fucking headbang as hard as you want in between guitar beats. There's just a certain beauty to that.
No, absolutely.
Because it gets to be a headache once you get to stuff like fucking Hangar 18.
There has to be, I think, variation in metal, and I know some people don't like that. They want the same thing every single time, but I think you have to have variation in music. Certainly bands would reflect that opinion as they'll experiment with different sounds, sometimes much to the chagrin of their own fans. But I would say go ahead and experiment, and if it fails, at least you tried, as opposed to just playing the same thing over and over and over again and being bored. Walk was a departure from in a lot of ways was an aesthetic departure from what was on Vulgar Display of Power, but I think tone and theme, it absolutely reflected the entire message of the album.
Yeah, there's a few, Walk, Hollow, and the one I didn't pick, but if we would have got Nick here because we would have talked about This Love. Have you ever seen Beavis and Butthead make fun of This Love?
Yes. Isn't it like, oh, this is sissy, this is like, oh, it's great, it's wonderful, and they go back and like, oh, it's sissy.
No, this one's like, hey Butthead, don't you wonder why that Pantera guy is always so mad? It's like, his dad beat his ass like, damn it, Pantera, this beer's warm. Get me another one. Oh, is that a tear, Pantera? Is Daddy's little girl upset? I'm going to kick your ass and then actually, get out there and mow that lawn.
Okay, I vaguely remember this now.
Yeah, there's more homework I'll have to send you, but this is every time I hear This Love, I can't help but think of Beavis and Butthead.
I'm sure that's exactly what Rob Zombie never wants to hear anyone say again. Hey, anytime I hear your music, I think of Beavis and Butthead.
I don't think I've ever seen them make fun of them. The ones that I love the most are that one, the Hulk Hogan one. Have you ever seen them do Hulk Hogan?
No, well, you don't know the legend of White Zombie and Beavis and Butthead? They broke White Zombie basically. White Zombie was not doing all that well. They were not all that well known. And then they played a clip of, I want to say it was Thunderkiss 65 or Black Sunshine, one of the two. And Beavis and Butthead did what they do. They were making fun of it or whatever. And because the audience for Beavis and Butthead were kids, they were exposed to White Zombie, and White Zombie blew up after that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that one, Hulk Hogan, which is great because they start going off on how he's a role model because he took whatever it did to get big. And then the King Diamond one, they go, hey, look, it's the Hamburglar. The King Diamond comes on stage.
Okay, so the first two albums had a bit of a groove to it. They were too heavy to be played on mainstream radio, but they sounded like music. They were well constructed songs. And 2 years later, now I'm a senior in high school, by the way. I'm going to a lot more.
I remember those days.
Yes.
Remember those days.
Going to a lot more concerts. In 1994, they released Far Beyond Driven, and I remember a bunch of us cut school to go pick this up. To be in, we just needed to get to. It was March 22nd, 1994, and I believe we all cut class to go to the record store and get this album. And I think upon first listen, I remember feeling a sense of disappointment. Kind of like your idea of the listening to Vulgar and then going back and listening to Cowboy. You're like, oh, that's not nearly as good. I was anticipating more Vulgar Display of Power, and they went more Cannibal Corpse on this album, and I'll never understand why.
I like it.
I want to read a little bit. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
I was just saying it's it's been changing it up because they started power metal, which was the one before Cowboys. They had kind of a glam heavy metal, and then they went to kind of the groove metal, then to a thrashy groove metal, and now they're going to like a thrashy deathcore groove metal. Where else can we go?
A little bit here from the Wikipedia page on this one. At the time of its release, Phil Anselmo was injured with ruptured discs in his back and was suffering from chronic pain from degenerative disc disease. Anselmo began drinking heavily, abusing painkillers, muscle relaxants, and began experimenting with heroin to numb the pain. This would actually become a huge thorn in the side of the band years later. But he gave an interview at Loyola in 2009, and he said, "I think it was about the time when the first Far Beyond Driven came in at number 1. I was pretty terrified. I was happy as hell, don't get me wrong, but I was like, oh my God, yes. At that point, I had just gotten back from the doctor from having my second MRI done, and I realized that I had 2 blown-out discs. Now, in order for me to be this Superman that the media had built me up to be, I had to quell the pain, so I started off with regular painkillers and muscle relaxers. Eventually, you climb up the painkiller ladder because painkillers lie to you. They will magnify that injury, and that's all in your mind, the injury and the painkillers." Actually, what he's referencing there is he was taking opiates, and he was graduating from pill opiates to shooting opiates, which would be heroin. Far Beyond Driven took Pantera's music to an even heavier style than on previous releases, setting for a continuous slow-chugging mid-tempo grooves throughout the album. Much of the shift was due to Dimebag Darrell's more down-tuned and heavier sludgy playing style. Phil Anselmo's lyrics on the album were far more personal than on previous albums, such as Becoming and 25 Years, appearing to be about Anselmo's early life. I can probably attribute that to why I didn't like the album as much. You're a huge fan of Doom. It makes sense that you would like this album maybe more so than some of the other Pantera things. I like the more groovier stuff, more punk rock stuff, and I'm not going to say I didn't like it because, there are definitely songs on here I did like a lot, and it's not a bad album by any stretch of the imagination. It was just this was the beginning of that sort of breakbeat death metal style of Pantera, and I felt like there was more they could have done with the style that they had formulated in Vulgar that they then abandoned and never went back to. To me, Vulgar was the high water mark for Pantera. So what are some of your thoughts here on Far Beyond Driven, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, I think there's a good point. I never actually thought about that they did kind of abandon some of the stuff that they had planted because I guess musicians, sometimes their playing style changes. Phil Anselmo does way too many opiates, stuff happens. But yeah, actually, my first experience with this album was from my uncle. I had a friend of mine who was like, dude, I was watching made a video for the game Dead Space, and somebody put the song Slaughtered by Pantera in there. I'm like, never heard that. And then I listened to it, and I'm like, what? Pantera did this? What is this sorcery? So,
all right, that's actually a good intro. So let's hear a little bit of a little out of order here, but let's go ahead and listen to some of the sorcery now. What do you think?
I agree.
Okay, now don't get me wrong. That song makes you want to punch somebody in the face, so it's a hit. But can you see? Can you see how vocally what a departure that is, even from their last album? He's growling in that one. That comes very, very close to Cookie Monster.
Yeah, actually, I think Chris Barnes should have taken vocal duties on that one. Yeah, I think actually those vocals are what really attracted me to. So like I was talking about, when I first got into metal, it was all metalcore because they had like a lot of the screaming, but then they had singing, which now kind of pisses me off. But anyways, it's because like then I could do growls, like I can still do growls with the best of them. But back then my singing wasn't exactly great. Like I'm not Bruce Dickinson, but I'm serviceable. I'm pretty good. At least I think so. Yeah, but I could do growls, so, you know, this is a song if I wanted to do a sing-along in the bus lot, just...
I'll tell you what, Slaughtered was one of those ones that they also used to play a lot. They would usually play it either before or after they would do the Domination Hollow medley, and I remember back at the time, I was not a huge fan of it. Listening to it now, I'm like, it's amazing what 20 years will do to your opinion on things, but I dig it now. I think that back then it didn't have. I can't believe I'm about to say this, considering what we just listened to, but I felt like it didn't have enough speed to it.
I thought you were about to say it didn't have enough finesse, but speed would.
Yeah, because that's what I think about when I think about Pantera, finesse.
You know, I really loved that time where Dimebag came on stage and played along with Dimebag.
All right, so I want you to just kind of picture this in your mind. You know, you listen to, you pick up the Cowboys from Hell album and you press play, track 1, and you hear Cowboys from Hell, and it's you know, and it's just like, oh, that's such a perfect way to start an album. And you fast forward and you pick up Vulgar Display of Power and you hear Mouthful War, and like, oh, what a perfect way to start an album. And it's like, what are they going to come up with this time? And then now maybe you don't say it this way, maybe you do, but I heard the first track of Far Beyond Driven, and I remember thinking to myself, if the whole album is like this, boy, am I going to be pissed off. This is Strength Beyond Strength. Perfectly fine. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, oh, really? You stopped writing music and now you're just making noise. But at least it's fast noise, and I was interested in that. And then it gets to about 1 minute and 30 seconds into it, and it's like a fat heavyweight. You know, like, oh yeah, they've got this great knockout power, and you know, if they touch you, you're going to be going to sleep. Except that after a few minutes, they're so gassed out you can knock them over. That's what that song reminds me of. It reminds me of a heavyweight fighter. Just, you know, they're all power and no stamina. After about 1 minute and 30 seconds, they slow it down to the point where I'm no longer interested in the song.
Well, as long as they don't grab the shorts and the you and the balls like Jack Congo. Yeah, I could see what you're saying there, because, you know, it's been a while since I've actually listened to that song, and I totally forgot about the da-da-da-da-da. Like, listening to it here, because, you know, on this phone, it's a little warbly. Like, that section, I could have swore I was playing No Mercy on my N64, and that was somebody's entrance theme. Like, it totally sounds like somebody's wrestling entrance theme. But
yeah.
I think this is actually, like, a pretty good intro to the album, because it seems like every album just got progressively heavier.
Mm-hmm.
With this one's kind of like, okay, you thought the last one wasn't heavy enough. Here's some of this. Phil's going to be doing his audition for the next Cannibal Corpse album.
This was actually like one of their best albums that they've, as far as albums sold. This was number one. You know, I remember this did really well on the charts. A lot of people bought it. It was a very successful album for them. This was kind of their like Pearl Jam moment. You know, this was the moment where this was the album where like people who weren't necessarily into metal got into Pantera. This was the time in which white hats. You know what a white hat is? These are the your high school and college, you know, guys who wear the white college sports team. You know, these are the guys that says Cox on their head, and you're like, why does your head say Cox? Like, oh, because I'm a fan of South Carolina. You know, these are the guys that show up to the metal show because they saw moshing on MTV, and they were like, oh, it's an opportunity for me to hurt people without a ref stopping me. You know, this was the album that brought those people to the show. It was ours, man. It was ours before that, and I think probably why I have such a negative sort of vibe from Far Beyond Driven is that's when I realized that my band. It was the first time I would go through this. You know, now 36 years old, I don't care as much, but at the time, you know, 17 years old, I'm like, I've lost my band. I now have to share my band with a bunch of douchebags.
Yeah, when you said white hats, I'm like, the Klan?
No, those are white sheep, sir.
Oh, sorry. I mean, they got white hats too, but actually, trust me, especially if you like come to the festivals. Like, I've only been to one concert, and speaking of concerts, on just a slight tangent, I don't know if you love Anthrax and stuff, but Anthrax playing Among the Living in its entirety, Exodus, Municipal Waste, Holy Grail, and High on Fire, they're touring.
I know. I get the Polestar updates, and I have to ask myself a question every time I get one of those. Can I get a babysitter?
Ooh, yeah. Well, luckily mine's on a Saturday. As long as my grades are good, yay, I should be able to go.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, but where was I? Oh, yes, douchebags taking the metal concert. When I went to that the Mayhem Festival, I was there to see Megadeth. That's the only band I wanted to see. Unfortunately, I had to sit through a bunch of metalcore shit. And Red Fang, if you've not heard of Red Fang, they're like fucking awesome. So great. I'll have to send them to you if you haven't heard of them. You ever heard of them?
Heard of them. I don't think I've actually heard them.
I'll have to send them to you. They're great. But I mean, there was some good stuff, like, you know, Trivium on Earth. They had some really good guitar stuff. And then Machine Head did a damn good job. Then Megadeth. You know, Megadeth was great, but this is a story Nick told me, what was it, after our pancake summit, before everybody went to college, because that's what we do. We go to IHOP. He's like, yeah, I had a friend of mine that I went to college with that was talking about how in the front photo pit, like, you know, you paid a bit extra, got an extra ticket. This walked up to some hot girl like this, the roadie dude's like, hey, do you like Megadeth? Oh, yeah, sure. What's your favorite song? Peace Sells. Okay, good enough. Come up here. Meet Dave. I'm like, oh, fuck that. I mean, yeah, it's just that. It's like a lot of the really popular bands kind of take a lot of fun out of that really hardcore show. Yeah,
I have a friend of mine, my buddy Chuck, who worked in the music industry for a little while. He worked for a record label, and he was a distributor rather. And I remember he used to make jokes about how, you know, like kids would mosh to stereo hiss just because they weren't really there for the music. They were there to beat people up. Just as
I'm the opposite. I don't like, you know, I thought about moshing once. I'm like, you know, I don't want to get punched in the face. I want to air guitar my heart out and then scream and sing along.
I don't mind being punched in the face, but it's the intent behind the punch. If you're there just to punch me, well, I mean, we don't need to do this to music where I'm trying to enjoy the show, see? You know, if I went to go see Helmet years ago, and now by this point I've got my graduate degree, I've got my first job post-graduate school working in a rehab, and I can't be walking into work with my face all scratched and bruised and whatnot. So I'm not going to mosh, but I got to jump in there. But I love In the Meantime by Helmet. It's probably one of my favorite songs ever. I'm like, I'm just going to mosh to that song. And I took one step into the mosh pit and got punched directly in the eye.
You done goof, son. You done goof.
It was one of those like UFC fights where like the bell rings and like 10 seconds later, it was a Korean zombie Mark Hominick moment. Ding bang, doom, I'm on the floor. You know,
it was James Irvin. That's what I just thought of randomly. James Irvin knee to the face.
Yeah, it was just like I've never really had a black eye prior to that moment, so I didn't know what it felt like. It felt hot and stingy. And I remember, like, my friend took me to the bathroom when I regained consciousness, and he was like, "Yeah, you're fucked up, dude."
Just say you got mugged. Say, I was at a show last night, and somebody wanted my wallet, and I was a big man and said, no, and then you punched me in the face.
Dude, I worked with a lot of guys that had done, like, federal time. I mean, we're not talking county jail time here. We're talking guys that, were, mostly brothers who had been to the federal penitentiary, and they were out, and part of their probation was they had to do drug rehab, so that was why they were talking to me. And these guys were like, "Tell me who did this to you."
See, I was at a show, and I stepped like 1 foot into the pit, and then James Irvin kneed me in the face.
Yeah, well, explaining to black drug dealers why you purposely let someone punch you in the eye was sort of a feat of exhaustion. But needless to say, their hearts were in the right place.
Yeah. They were doing it for their grandma.
Exactly. All right. So closing out Far Beyond Driven, I want to be clear about this. People listening to this podcast going, why would he call this the greatest band of all time when he does nothing but like complain about every single album they did after the second one? Look, they're all good. Okay, they're still one of my favorite bands of all time. It's just you can have a favorite. Look, I love my wife, but she's not perfect. Okay?
Pantera to your wife.
My point being, nothing is perfect. Everything, you can criticize anything. Say McCartney loves GSP, criticizes GSP too. It's okay to criticize as long as it's constructive. So not everything that Pantera did was just the greatest thing ever. They're still better than Pearl Jam. I don't know. I was trying to think of the other. Silverchair. That's the one. See, that line would have been funnier if I hadn't stumbled over it. They're still better than Silverchair or Candlebox.
Still better than that band.
Yeah, them guys. All right. So, and look, as much as I complain about Far Beyond Driven, there were still some great songs on there, and this is probably my favorite one. It's why I picked it. This is called I'm Broken. About that song was the video that they put out of Phil Anselmo walking in a circle in a bare cement room for the entire 4 minutes and 24 seconds of that song.
Whatever works.
Wearing a Crowbar T-shirt.
Crowbar, they're so awesome. It doesn't make sense how Down became one.
Yeah, it's all coming together now. All right, so after Far Beyond Driven, 2 years later, they would produce another album called The Great Southern Trendkill. And some some information about that album here. The Great Southern Trendkill features some of the fastest tempos and most down-tuned guitars that the band ever recorded. It has also more experimental nature to the songs, such as the acoustic guitar and keyboard-laden Suicide Note Part 1. Unlike Pantera's first three major label albums, the vocals are often double-tracked and layered to create a more demonic effect. An example of this can be found in 13 Steps to Nowhere, where Phil Anselmo's singing voice is backed up by the high-pitched screaming done by Seth Putnam of the band Anal Cunt.
Oh, God, they brought in Seth Putnam?
Yeah, I'm just now learning that for the first time as well. But I'd like to, again, say that there is, in fact, a band called Anal Cunt.
Oh, they have great song names.
Yes, they do. So this was 1996 when The Great Southern Trendkill came out. And when I think about my anticipation for Far Beyond Driven and sort of my disappointment that it wasn't quite what I thought it would be, The Great Southern Trendkill, in my mind, makes Far Beyond Driven into Battery by Metallica. I mean, again, they're one of my favorite bands, and I don't hate any of their albums, but this is probably the one I like the least.
Really?
Oh, God, yeah. First of all, Vulgar Display of Power is the one I like the most. So The Great Southern Trendkill just seemed obnoxious to me. And it still
that reinventing was the worst.
Oh, well.
Reinventing, you can, I mean, we'll get to that later. I'll talk about that when we get to it. No, I really like this album, actually, if I may do, because I only have 3 Pantera albums. Well, actually, Far Beyond Driven, I let a friend borrow and never got it back. That happens. But Southern Trendkill, actually, I took a girl on a date. We went and saw Toy Story 3. I don't know if you've ever seen Toy Story 3.
Sure.
Great movie.
Sure, at the end, all the toys descend into hell.
Yeah. The girl I brought started crying. I went ahead and just got the arm around. I was like, good job. Yeah. So after that, went to the movies. Went up because movie theaters around the huge shopping center, and there's a mall. Went to the mall. Went to FYE. This album was like $7. I'm like, I got to jump on this shit. So after a date, what are we listening to on the way back to her house? Fucking Pantera.
And the first song you hear on that album is, of course, The Great Southern Trendkill. He's yelling about the Great Southern Trendkill. Didn't you hear? Again, that just sounds obnoxious to me. It's like, I think my problem with this album was again, I've seen Pantera like a dozen times, and I saw them more and more. The more popular they became because they were touring a lot, and I never gave up an opportunity to go see Pantera. Just a quick side note: they actually toured with White Zombie, and they. It was White Zombie or Rob Zombie, I don't remember which one at this point. But I remember they weren't coming to Long Island or New York City, and I was like, how do you miss one of the biggest cities, in the world? But the closest they were coming was Albany, and I actually bought tickets to go. Albany is not close to Long Island, not by a long stretch. But I was going to take the drive to Albany, and we bought tickets for the show, and then, I don't remember how close it was to the date, but they ended up canceling because they didn't sell enough tickets. But I remember, and I've told this story about a million times, I feel like, recently, but, Phil Anselmo just talks incessantly during songs. I told this one about the Super Joint. Yeah, so I'm not going to retell that story again, but I will say this. Phil Anselmo, one, he sounds retarded. 2, I don't care what he's talking about. And 3, he comes across like a Prius driver. You know, his shit doesn't stink, and he's better than everybody else. And it's like, I'm better than you, and I'm half a retard, so it's like, I'm fucking better than you, blah, blah, blah. And I swear to God, that's all I remember about that tour. Was every time they were promoting the Great Southern Trendkill, it was fuck all these bands and fuck everything and fuck you too. And it was like, I just want to hear you play, you know, just play something from Vulgar, please.
Yeah, my uncle went and saw them, and he said the coolest thing ever was they opened with Suicide Note, which I know you were listening to before this because I saw on Spotify. Like Suicide Note Part 1, they'd have a huge curtain. And then once they got to Suicide Note Part 2, the curtain would drop and all the lights would come on. It was fucking intense. Yeah, I mean, this is another album, like I was talking about, they progressed heavier. I guess as Phil Anselmo got into more and more drugs. Yeah, like this is pretty much the, like if you want to use high water mark again, this is the high water mark for the heaviness of Pantera. This is bordering fucking death metal.
Yeah, this is proof that the more drugs you do as a musician, the sadder and darker your music becomes. So I think if you want to sell music to Mark Radulich, don't do drugs. Because I like happy angry metal, not sad angry metal.
Oh, see, I like a little bit of both. It just depends on what type of day. And if I'm in a bad mood, like my girlfriend dumped me last week, put on fucking blues. That's what they're for.
When I've had a bad day at the jail, and, you know, how do you have a good day at the jail? Well, I don't live there. But when I've had a bad day at the jail, I like to listen to, you know, Feist or Cat People.
Oh, my. I've heard of Feist. I've not heard of Cat People.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I'll put on, like, Joe Bonamassa, just, you know, mellow out.
There you go. All right, moving right along here. So, like I said, this was not my favorite album by them. It's my least favorite by a long stretch. So I only picked The Great Southern Trendkill. I think War Nerve and Suicide Part 1 were probably songs I could have picked, but I was like, I would rather not talk about this album as much as possible. So let's go ahead and pick and play the 2 songs that you picked. Now this first one, Drag the Waters. Why are you subjecting me to this song? Do you not like me? What's your problem, sir?
Oh, you know, it's been a good 3 months, but yeah, I think our relationship's really run its course, and I just don't know if we can do this anymore.
I don't think I saw when you submitted your list to me, and I'm looking at like fucking Drag the Waters. Why?
I love that song. It's just like it's so heavy. It's so heavy.
All right. Your definition of heavy and mine greatly differ, but let's go ahead and play one.
Musically, it's heavy.
All right, so let's hear the very heavy Drag the Waters. Not as bad as I remember it, but
probably because you like death metal more.
Probably, you know, it's definitely got a slower tempo to it. And every time I hear Drag the Waters, I mean, because of the title mostly, but I always get this image of like, you know, like music is a physical form and it's being dragged through mud. You know, it's when music writers sort of talk about certain metal genres and describe it as like sludge metal. That's what that reminds me of.
Yeah. No, let's work with my theory here. You hate this song. Now, do you admit that at least Dimebag did a good job? Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a well written song. Don't get me wrong. It's just, and I don't hate it. It's very hard to separate my initial feelings about this album from how I feel about it now. You know, there's a big
I know you feel.
There's a big difference between 20 and 36. So and the album came out in 1996. I was born in 1976. So again, I was 20 years old at the time.
I was 5.
You loved it back then. No, I just like I said, I was just in a different place. I mean, I can listen to it now and I can appreciate it. And I'm not saying, it's just funny. I started to listen to it when I played it just now, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I want to hate this song, but I don't. But I remember 20-year-old Mark definitely did. It was just like, why would you slow down? What the, it's like, you can't make me happy. If they're either too slow, or they're too fast. I'm the baby bear. I want it to be just right.
Yeah, this is like Kirk Windstein. Like, I think it's his influence on Phil. It has to be.
All right, so talk a little bit about Floods here. I don't even remember this song. I just know it's the longest song on the album. It's 7 minutes long. And I don't remember much about it.
Well, the way I found this song when I first really got to using my computer, like senior year of high school, because I'd really just kind of had, every few weeks I'd be able to use it. I was looking at the top guitar solos of all time on Guitar World, and they named the solo and the outro to this song as number 4.
Really?
Yeah, totally. As your homework, you should totally go at least listen to the song, because it's one of the softer. It's definitely especially if you consider it on this album. It's kind of a soft song, but the guitar work is just so great. Yeah. Yeah,
all right.
Number 4. I'm like, wow, really? Okay.
All right, so here it is. This is a little bit of Floods.
I know that's probably not the part that will wow you, but trust me, when you get to that solo, it's got a lot of soul. It's got a lot of it's a lot of Dimebag. He always has good solos. And what I never brought up when we talked about Rex earlier, a cool thing that I read about Pantera that I totally agree with is that if you listen, the cool thing about Dimebag is when he plays, everybody but the bass drops out. So usually it's just solo, and you hear a really cool undercurrent of bass, but everything else is just solo, which makes them kind of special.
Okay. In the interest of time, we're gonna move forward here. Move on to the last studio album of Pantera's career, which was Reinventing the Steel, an album they dedicated to their fans. It was 4 years later, year 2000, when they put this out. A little bit about it. Around the same time, Anselmo was involved in different side projects, and they're just doing a whole bunch of different things. And eventually, The Abbott brothers, as it says, was frustrated, and they held out for a time, assuming Anselmo would return. However, according to Anselmo, taking a break from Pantera was a mutual thing between each of the band members, and in 2003, they just broke Pantera up, and they went on to form Damage Plan, which was not very good.
Meh.
Yeah, it was definitely meh. And Phil went on to do Down, which was quite good, Superjoint Ritual. So, unfortunately, that marked the end of Pantera. But, they went out with somewhat of a bang. I mean, I think they tried. You can't help but feel like when listening to Reinventing the Steel that this was a band that was not getting along.
Yeah, you can really feel you can feel they're trying, and I think they do make a pretty good attempt. There are some really killer songs on the album, but at the same time, there's kind of like an uncomfortable strain. Like, if you listen to a podcast, and you can tell the people don't like each other, it kind of makes it uncomfortable to listen.
Apparently, you've listened to my Sunday show.
No, I've actually wanted to. If it weren't so early, I would totally jump in on it. I might have to sometime because I can actually do MMA.
God bless the Wildcat Jeff Harris. He creates a little bit of tension on the show, and we love him for it. But no, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
In any case, this was a love letter to their fans, and it was a final love letter to their fans. I don't think they knew it at the time, but I think deep down they knew that this was not going to last. There was a lot of tension in the band. Phil Anselmo was into doing some other stuff. I think Pantera sort of made its mark in the history of music, and it was time. That's really the most overwhelming thing I can say about Reinventing the Steel was it was kind of like Saturday Night Strike Force show. It was a fair goodbye.
Oh, everybody fought cans.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so the title, the first track on this thing is "Revolution Is My Name." Again, one of those songs where it was kind of a middle finger to the music industry and a lot of bands that they had felt like were just putting out music for the sake of making a quick buck. So this is "Revolution Is My Name." What can you say about that? It's a song.
Yeah, I thought it's an anthemic song. If I may say if I may give it one tag, it is anthemic.
Yeah.
It has sort of an anthem quality, you want to shout on the mountains, just shout "Revolution is my name."
Yeah. It belongs on a T-shirt. It was a good lead-off song for this album, but like I said, it's Reinventing Steel, if you just listen to it without knowing anything else about the band, it sounds fine. It sounds like a heavy metal album. With the context, it just feels like if I can compare it to anything, it feels like Motley Crue's Girls, 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 or it was just kind of like, we need to put something out so that we can tour again. You know, we just need to do this, you know, like it's an obligation. It's a final fight. It's just something you had to do to get it done, and that's really about the nicest thing I can say about it. And again, it's not like a terrible album. It's just, you know, like you said, I just get this overwhelming feeling of meh.
Yeah, I was about to just commit complete sacrilege because this is my most hated album of all time. But when you put context and music together, this kind of is, I don't want to say it's almost like they're Saint Anger. Like they were really trying to recapture what they originally did, but it just didn't work like that. Like, this is not Saint Anger. Like, I despise that album. And it's funny. It's not even for most people's reasons. I just hate James Hetfield's vocals on it. They're out of key. I can't do it. Like, yeah, it's him.
Yeah, I get why you're saying. I get, like, the Saint Anger reference. You know, it's just when the band isn't really on the same page, it comes out in the music.
Yeah, like a band, something you need to be in sync with.
Mm-hmm.
Or Backstreet Boys, one of the two.
The other thing I'm going to say about it, and it could lead into this song, is it's one of the ones you picked, actually. It's that Pantera, on its way out, had this real issue of the songs that they were writing were not as good as the band had, you know, done earlier in their career, and they were obnoxious. So it's kind of like the douchebag who, you know, he's making fun of people and he's being an asshole, and it's just like, yeah, but anything that you're doing sucks. Like, you know, you have no right to stand there on a pedestal and point fingers and say everything that you're doing is terrible when what you're doing isn't good.
So he's the fuck Metallica commenter I get every time on my column I mention Metallica. I hate those people.
Listen, I'm already in trouble with some of the listeners for some of the commenters for criticizing and I wasn't even criticizing them. That was the weird part. But all right, don't talk about the commenters on 401. They're all lovely people. We thank them for their patronage. And more on that. Here's Goddamn Electric. For douchebags.
Yeah, it is a really douchey song. But in my defense, when talking about the commenters, the only ones I complain about are the ones who don't defend their views. Yeah.
You suck. Why do you suck? Because you suck. Oh, well, thank you.
Well, most of the time, actually, I'll usually have somebody comment back to them, well, you know, you're an idiot for saying that. I'm like, thank you. Yeah, it's a really douchey song, but it's catchy.
Yeah,
it
totally.
Catchy.
You know,
yeah,
as I'm listening to Reinventing the Steel and some of these songs, I can't help but think, you know, like this would be the last Pantera song, and, you know, Vinnie Paul and Dimebag Darrell, the now late Dimebag Darrell, would find two other band members and they would go on to form Damage Plan, which we both agreed was not particularly great. But I feel like, you know, sort of working backwards, Reinventing the Steel was a great setup for, I think it was the name of the album was Explode. If you got all the way through Explode, maybe because you were eating a sandwich or you were high or something, it totally feels like a good progression from Reinventing the Steel. They just kept up with that, you know. And the great thing about Damage Plan was it was all the shittiness of the last two Pantera albums with none of the pretension.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the Damage Plan album? I think it was called Newfound Power or something.
Yeah, you're right. It was Newfound Power, but the song I remember from it was Explode.
See, I've only listened. I think I listened to maybe once. Like this album here, I've not listened to all the way through before this podcast.
Like, I don't comment on this. They're like, where do you two assholes get off doing a career retrospective when one of you hasn't even listened to all the albums?
Well, no, they'll probably bitch at us about, why didn't you cover the first half of Pantera? Which, I mean...
Yeah, first of all, anything before Cowboys from Hell, in my opinion, doesn't count.
I'll count Power Metal because Phil was there. That's the only one I'll count. No, but, something like that. Anyways, go.
All right, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about this. Now, I mean, we've both agreed that there's some problems with reinventing the steel, and that was why I only went with Revolution as my name, though I probably would have picked Goddamn Electric if I had a gun to my head. What made you pick I'll Cast a Shadow?
I only picked Goddamn Electric because there's another reason Nick needs to be here, because he's talking about, when I first heard the song, after every sentence, he'll be like, it's Goddamn Electric. But I'll Cast a Shadow, I think it's a really good song, honestly, and, when you consider, what happened with Dimebag, this is a really ominous song. In retrospect, it really kind of calls up your spine. You're like, wow, you weren't kidding.
All right, I don't remember anything about it, so it's
really?
kind of like a sitcom on NBC. It's new to me. So that was 3 tracks from Reinventing the Steel. So let's go back. I'm going to go in the Wayback Machine to an hour ago. And let's talk a little bit about Vulgar Display of Power. Now, on May 15th, 2012, so last year, a 2-disc deluxe edition of Vulgar Display of Power was released to celebrate the 20th anniversary. 20 years since Vulgar Display of Power came out. Again, dating myself. I'm an old man. Disc 1 is a remastered version of the original album along with the song Piss, which we'll hear momentarily. And Disc 2 is a DVD. Disc 2, Vinnie Paul had said that Piss was the only undiscovered complete Pantera track there ever was, and it would appear on the 20th anniversary release. At the time of the original Vulgar Display of Power, he didn't feel like it was right to go on the record. Let's go ahead and listen to it, and then we'll talk about that. starts getting good after about a minute.
Yeah. It's not a. Actually, I had not listened to that song either before doing this podcast. That was all Nick's idea because he was like, "Oh, we're gonna talk about the new song, sure." And then he texted me today talking about his Japanese tips. Anyways, yeah. Hopefully he'll be here next time. But I thought it was it's a solid track. I think it's on par with maybe the weaker tracks of Vulgar Display. Like you can kind of tell why it wasn't there.
Yeah, it's just kind of there. Like if it hadn't been an anniversary edition and Dimebag wasn't dead, I don't know what purpose it would have been to have thrown that onto anything.
Yeah, I think it's a nice, like, oh yeah, Pantera's been gone for about 10 years. Here's a little piece of nostalgia to hold you off until, the apocalypse happens and you get to see Dimebag again.
Right. All right, so that was the career of Pantera. It started off great. They revolutionized music, and then they got obnoxious, and then they broke up.
Yeah. Are we going to do the covers?
Oh, no, we are.
Oh, okay.
We are, but I wanted to kind of wrap up all the albums there, and that's really the best way that I can sum up the career of Pantera. Like I said, started off great, revolutionized music, became obnoxious, broke up. And there it is.
Brock Lesnar's MMA career. Brock Lesnar's MMA career.
Brock Lesnar was always obnoxious.
Well, yeah, but he showed up, punched some people in the face, became more obnoxious, got his ass beat, did breakdancing, lost Overroyd, and then went back to WWE where they booked him like shit.
Small correction. Got punched in the face, did breakdancing, fought over him, and got kicked in the itis. And then went to the WWE and got booked shitty. Yes.
Yeah, well, I was actually watching, like, just small MMA tangent. Me and my stepdad, like, this was before I discovered what internet streaming was. Went to a pizza place to watch this. And I had so much Mountain Dew I was shaking because, I'm excited. And out comes Kane, and then comes Brock. And I'm like, I think Brock's got a chance. I think he might be able to survive this one. Gets punched, does a break dance, gets punched again. I'm like, oh, there goes that.
I was in a theater watching.
Oh, yeah.
My wife is pregnant,
oh.
and she came with me to see to see the pay-per-view in the movie theater. And he had just gotten out of the fight with Shane Carwin, and he barely got through that, and I was hoping against all hope that he was going to survive all of this. And he started off okay, and then 10 seconds later things started to go downhill. And he lost the fight, and he lost it quite thoroughly. And now I have to explain, I'm in Polk County, which in Florida is a very rural area. As many of the deputies say to me at the jail, there's only 2 jobs in Polk County, and it's either be a farmer or be a deputy. Everybody else is unemployed and on meth. So, so I'm at this theater, and it's like mostly, there's like 10% white, 90% Mexican. So you can imagine what it was like when Brock Lesnar got his ass beat by Brown Pride.
Oh, when he threw that flying knee, I knew he was done. I was like, what? Yeah, actually, the Carwin fight, there was some dude, I was sitting with a ton of people, and he's getting his ass kicked, and this one guy was like, yeah, kill him. And then when Lesnar pulled out that arm triangle, this guy said, motherfucker, and just, like, ran, slammed the door open, and then, like, his buddies would go console him, like, Jesus Christ, he had $50,000 on this fight?
It's damn funny. All right, so if there's one thing Mark loves covers. I like covers of all kinds. Robert's hit me to a couple of covers recently. I have entire mixes of just covers. Again, when in doubt, play the cover. That's my motto. And going back, Pantera, has done some pretty good ones. I mean, there's some bands that just kind of cover the same stuff over and over and over again, but Pantera's got some interesting ones. I just got off the page, but one of the very first covers I've ever heard by Pantera was on the Crow soundtrack, and I have very fond memories of this song. I have very fond memories of that soundtrack. It brings back a lot of memories from that time with my friends and I. The Crow soundtrack was a very popular album among my group of friends. So like I said, I have a lot of positive memories, but this one in particular, where they take little bits and pieces of, I think it's Taxi Driver, and the song is called The Badge. And at the end of it, it's like, what's behind the badge? And or look behind the badge. And I remember, we couldn't quite make out what he was saying. And one of my friends once thought he said, "What big eyes you have."
He's a wolf. I see.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. Cop for wolves. I get it now.
Yeah. So, it's a fun song. It definitely takes me back to some of the better years of Pantera. So from the Crow soundtrack, this is The Badge.
Stuck on this.
Love that song, and it's actually a Poison Idea cover. That's who does that.
Yeah, I've never actually heard that cover. I think it was on might have been on a compilation, because I think it was Mom and Uncle sent me something when they lived in Minnesota for Christmas. It was like the best of Pantera, but I already had 3 out of the 5 main Pantera CDs. So they it came with a gift receipt. I took that bitch back to FYE and got the new reissue of Control Denied's first CD, which I don't know if you've listened to Control Denied, but if you haven't, go do it.
Okay.
It's Chuck Schuldiner doing Death with a regular singer.
All right.
Yeah, it's great. If you're a Chuck Schuldiner fanboy like myself.
So the Badge was one of the first covers that I think that they had ever done that was actually recorded, at least that I knew of. So sorry, I'm way distracted. Hello, where are we at? There we go. Later on, they would do a cover of Ted Nugent's Catch Crush Fever, which one of the things I like about covers is, you could hear a song and, it's okay, and then one of these metal bands does it and it just turns it up to 10. And it's so much better that it's heavier. And that was kind of the thing with Catch Crush Fever. It was one of those songs, it's a fun song and everything, but it's no big deal. Then Pantera got a hold of it and it made it kind of ballsy.
Yeah, honestly, I prefer this version 10,000 times more than Nugent. I love the Nuge. The dude's the man, even if he does marry 16-year-olds. But it's hard to beat the Nuge unless you're Pantera covering the Nuge.
That's right. So let's hear a little bit of Pantera covering the Nuge.
Well, I don't know where
Yeah, I think Phil Anselmo is like in that song, like I think what sells it is the fact he sounds like Zakk Wylde. He got thrown down a flight of stairs into a retardation, and then he started swishing Jello through his teeth. I mean, yeah, that's what he sounds like.
All right.
It works with the song because it just got kind of that like snarl, that kind of groove to it, especially when you consider what the song is definitely talking about.
So, all right, the last song we're going to play for the night, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the next album that we're going to do a review of in the next few weeks, and do all our plugs and everything, which is in the 20 minutes of the show. So let me get on with this. Now they've done a number of Black Sabbath songs. The last song on Far Beyond Driven is a Black Sabbath cover, and it's actually a very pretty song. They did a good job with it. The video is a little weird, kind of somebody playing with computer graphics, but. On the Nativity in Black 2 album, they covered Electric Funeral. This is not one of my favorite Black Sabbath songs, but I could see why you would like it. It's nice and doomy and gloomy. What do you like about Electric Funeral?
Well, especially, like, I'd actually never heard this cover of it. Like, I just Googled, I'm like, Pantera cover songs, because, I didn't want to do, like, Hole in the Sky or Planet Caravan, which, great covers, but I was just looking for something not Black Sabbath. And then it was like, the Cold Gin, they did a live cover of Cold Gin, but, I don't think live audio would work well here. No. And then I was like, Electric Funeral. I'm like, I really do like that song. I wonder how it sounds. And then I listened to it, and, like, did you listen to it before this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he does, like, Phil does, like, the best Ozzy impersonation Zakk Wylde wishes he could do. Because Zakk Wylde sounds exactly like, or as one of my friends put it, he sounds like Ozzy gargling pudding.
All right. So here it is, our final song of the night. Another cover by Pantera. Nice one to go out on. Major influence of Pantera, Black Sabbath. This is Electric Funeral. If you want to hear another version of Electric Funeral, I think you should. I want to say it's Electric Funeral. That might be a different one I'm thinking of. I think Typo Negative does a cover of that. All right, so 50 words or less. What was that?
I said it would fit them, and one thing that really works for that cover is Phil's Southern accent, which I have a Southern accent. Some things songs really work with, and like that part when he's doing the Ozzy thing, like "Some in the sky," like that kind of drawl that comes out at the end. Really, I think it really kind of pushes the phrase up a little bit.
Indeed, all right. So, I think I've kind of given my assessment of Pantera. Just in all, 50 words or less. What do you have to say about the life and times, the career of Pantera?
Ooh, 50 words or less. Oh man, well I'm just wasting words right there. I'd say they were. I don't want to say they weren't innovative per se, but they took their influences and they made them into something that was all their own. And there's never an album by them that is the same. There's a progression that goes all the way to the end. Like it's kind of like a nice rise and fall. And the cool thing is, it was only 10 years, approximately 10 years.
As we've been talking, and it's funny you say that, I have a podcast which we've been on hiatus because my partner in crime there, Sean Comer, apparently couldn't afford a copy of Rocky Balboa. But we started something called The Long Road to Ruin, which we were looking at movie series. We started with Rocky because it's one of my favorite series of all time, and we haven't been able to finish it, and we're not going to for the interim because he needs to rewatch Rocky Balboa and he can't afford the DVD. I'm not going to get into any of the details beyond that. But it's funny because we could have done a long road to ruin on Pantera.
Oh yeah. Like the cool thing is like I just kind of thought of this, but when you think about it, like they showed up when they were needed. Like, right as hair metal was going and grunge was starting to rise, to give a little bit of a shock in the chest to metal, kind of keep it going. And then once metal was back, because around 2000, I know a lot of the old bands started playing, like their old style. They were getting their old singers back. Like once metal was back, they left.
Yeah. It was they were very much, the guardian angels of metal. They kind of, as you said, they came in when they were needed. They left when there was no more use for them. It just happened to work out that way. And their legacy will always be with any band, that came after them, because to this day there are still bands that are deriving a lot of their sound from what Pantera gave them. So Pantera will, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is very political and whatever else. But they'll always be in the Mark Radulich Hall of Fame, where metal is concerned.
Well, my Metal Hall of Fame would be just so, mine would be like weird because I'm still, learning about metal. But
right.
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, don't get me started on them assholes.
I still remember the Fact or Fiction that we talked about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 10 comments, all arguing about it. But all right, so this is where we are right now. This is when we're recording this, it's actually January 15th, so we're halfway through the month. And part of the reason why we wanted to take some time and do this career retrospective of Pantera was there isn't a whole lot out in new metal for the month of January. There'll be some albums coming down the line, some ones that I can sort of just throw right out there that I'm interested in. There's a new Halloween coming out on the 18th. Nightfall, Rotten Sound. There's an EP coming out. On the 22nd, we've got Holy Grail. Voivod, the 25th is the new Hatebreed, Zornland, there's a Stradivarius EP, on the 28th is Funeral for a Friend, and Tomahawk comes out on the 29th of January. So, Robert, looking at all of what's available for January, looking at the end of January to do the next 411 Music Zone podcast, what do you want to review? You want to do the new Hatebreed?
I'll have to give the new single, because actually after this I have Jeremy's Fire Cell. But actually, just like a random note, what do you think of the song I sent you, the one that was like Fear Factory in Space?
Oh, if that's actually one that you wanted to do, I would love to do Makina. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah, I enjoyed listening to it. Actually, me and my kid were in here doing stuff, and I was you know what it was? I was cleaning up my office, which is also her playroom, for her birthday party.
Right.
And so I had it on while we were listening to it. And, she was in here playing, and I was cleaning up the place, and I was listening to it. I'm like, I have to tell Robert that this was Aces. So if you want to go ahead and do that, we can book that for a couple of weeks from today, and we can do the new Machina, I guess it's called?
Mechana? Maybe.
Mechana? Sure.
We could do that, or heck, Tomahawk. I actually got I don't know if you get emails from Jeremy, because I don't know if he sends them to everybody, but I actually have a review copy that I got last week of it. And my friend Kevin, he's the one that's like a Mike Patton. Like, if Mike Patton were on fire, he would not piss on him, because that would be disrespectful. He would throw himself on Mike Patton.
Oh, God, it's one of those people from the Church of Patton, huh?
Yeah, so I was like, hey, Kev. And, he was, and I was like, you were me jealous, and I didn't get anything back. So I'm like, I got the new Tomahawk. He's like, what? No, you got to be kidding me. You have to bring me a copy. Okay, but if you share it, I'm going to kick your ass.
That sounds fine and all. I mean, I always like a good Mike Patton album. Problem is, how am I going to be able to listen to it?
Yeah, because it's coming out like that week. I mean, I have a copy, but well,
maybe we can save that for early February. But in the meantime, if you want to, we'll do Machina. We can talk about that one. Or, like I said, I'm going to throw Hatebreed out again. Holy Grail, I like.
Halloween.
Yeah, the new Halloween comes out in a couple of days.
Yeah,
what do you want to do?
We'll probably get. Let's see. For me, it'd probably be Mechana or Halloween, because like Hatebreed, I'm on the fence about them. Like, some days I love them, some days I don't. So I mean, we'll probably figure it out, and hopefully we'll be able to get some other co-hosts, because I have no clue if Sean's even interested anymore. But think maybe we can get Nick on here, and if Sammer wants to join in, it'll be a fun accent fest.
No, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go with the album is called Empyrean, and the band is Mechana. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see, a week from today, I'm going to be doing The Long Road to Ruin, the Spider-Man trilogy, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, or as Sean Comer referred to it, Fuck Topher Gracie in the Ass with a Pool Cue. So that's
I saw
fun.
that, and I laughed my ass off. Like, Sean's a really cool dude.
Yeah, Sean's great. Sean curses like nobody I've ever seen before. He's fantastic. So maybe. That, then. So I think, all right. So I'm doing that. Pulling up my calendar here.
February 1st.
Hang on.
Or no, not February 1st. That's a Friday.
Today is the 15th. 22nd, I'm doing the thing with Sean. So we can probably do this again on the 29th.
Okay, yeah, that worked for me.
All right, sorry. So if you stuck with us this long, the next 411 album review is Mechana, and that'll be out on Tuesday, January 29th. All right. Let me go ahead and let you plug stuff that you're into and where they can read you at and follow you and all that.
Okay. So first, you can follow me at The Metal Coop, which is TheMetalCoop on Twitter. And you can email me at themetalcoop@gmail.com. That's the one I typically use for fan stuff. You can also read my column, which is on a little hiatus until about March, but I'm going to come back at the end of the month, best of January. Hammer of Doom News Report. It'll come out Monday. It'll be the last Monday in January. It'll come out then, and then I'll come out with another one in February, and we'll see from there. I'll also be having, Tomahawk album review. That'll be coming at the end of the month. I'll also try to get a review of the Mechana album out on just in text form, just for my own shits and giggles. I might get one of Halloween, because I'm going to try to do an album review every week that I'm not writing regular column. Okay? And I'll also be doing Jeremy Thomas's Buy and Sell this week. That's me and, I don't know who. We'll be doing that. And also, this is my MMA 411 MMA debut in the Fact or Fiction. Me and, Stuart Lange. Yeah, it's me and him. Oh, I'm dead. Because Wyatt was like, he's got a lot of social media people. I'm like, it's not that bad. Then I looked at his he has 500, I have 50. Like, fuck, it's really like trying to win an argument with Jeff Harris. For my
God.
Yeah. I mean, it should be good though. I think I've got some pretty solid answers.
Well, we'll know shortly because it's probably at the time that we're recording this. It's actually probably up on the site now. I'll have to give it a shot. I'll have to give it a look. See, I'll go vote for you.
Okay.
All right. So this Thursday. Let's start there. This Thursday is the return of Bellator on Spike TV. Since I got a gig Saturday night and I will not be home for the UFC on FX7, I will definitely be covering Bellator Thursday night as they debut on Spike TV. Got 2 title fights. That ought to be great. I'll only be doing the terrestrial broadcast. I am not going to cover anything on Spike.com. I just don't have that kind of time. Because also Thursday I will be, and this has nothing to do with 411 or a gig per se, but I got to talk about it because it's fantastic. I will be a paid taste tester for Taco Bell Thursday night.
Oh, you lucky bastard.
That's right, man. They're going to give me $20 in a gift certificate and possibly a Red Alert bracelet to sample their food and give them my feedback. It's going to be great.
Oh, that is awesome. I'll say, holy shit, I am shitting my pants. Official scorecard. Wyatt scored in favor of me. Todd Vogt scored a draw.
All right.
Oh.
See?
Yeah,
I definitely got to go check it out now. All right, so Thursday night's Bellator coverage. Saturday night in the MMA zone, someone will be covering UFC on FX7. No one stepped up yet, but maybe somebody will. Hopefully somebody who is going to be home and doesn't mind doing it will step in for and help out, because if Larry has to do this himself, he's going to cry. But yeah, we need someone will be covering UFC on FX7 from Brazil. Michael Pilafis Bisping versus Vitor. I'm stuck in a trance. Belfort. Ugh, I'm so tired.
Oh, Oh, FX7, yeah, that is this weekend.
That is this weekend. Tuesday night, a week from today, Sean Comer and I bring back the illustrious, as I said before, Long Road to Ruin movie review. So we'll be talking about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. And then I will be in the next edition of Fact or Fiction. And I think also this week, I was just reminded that I will be in the Music Fact or Fiction, which, of course, everyone loves me in the Music Fact or Fiction because I don't listen to anything that I ever get asked about. I have to spend hours doing that because everything that Joe asks me, I have to go look up because I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I don't know how many times I said, look, put me in when you've got metal questions. No, I get shit about, like, Nicki Minaj.
This is great. Okay, just looking at the bonus, it was asking if Fox needs to ditch the new metal. I didn't read Stewart's, but it says, and since I pointed out earlier that Stewart Lucky, the Radulich, wasn't guest judge, and Coop was extremely bold. Fortunate that Jeremy Lambert wasn't a guest judge because I made a fucking burn on Taylor Swift.
Have you heard his podcast with T. Berg's? I think it's Todd with Bergman's wife.
Oh, no. The only one I actually listened to with him, I listened to his Man Cave stuff with, like, Sammer, and I think I listened to one with Larry. No.
Okay.
I made it.
Go back through his Man Cave archives and listen to his Taylor Swift review. It's fantastic. It's one of the best podcasts he's ever done. It's so uncomfortable to listen to, but it's wildly entertaining.
Well, because I was making a joke. I'm like, new metal, as the metal guy, I really can't condone new metal. But, it's a lot better in some other things. Like, I don't get pumped up to Taylor Swift, and I put McFrinsey's like some writers on this site.
I'm not going to knock them. I mean, you like what you like. I before said I liked Cat People and, Feist. So, I'm sure there's somebody out there going, that's the Take Radilich's man card. But whatever, you like what you like in this world. And I'm not going to knock them for liking Taylor Swift. But
I'm just going to pick on them. Like, I'm just being friendly about it. Like, I totally get it. Like, my actually guiltiest pleasure, besides the stuff I listened to as a kid, which is boy bands, I could still sing you boy band stuff. You don't want that. It's like blues. That's like the most, that's like my CD collection. It's like I got some blues, but I can still do boy bands.
I like Amy Grant.
Nice. Like, I have an old Xbox, so I play GTA San Andreas. Goes between, like, NSYNC to As I Lay Dying.
Right. And on that note, folks, we appreciate you listening to our Pantera career retrospective. We will be back again in 2 weeks to review a new album. And sooner or later, it's going to be March, and Clutch's Earth Rocker will be out. March is Clutch month. We're just going to do everything Clutch in March. I've already got it planned out. There'll be guests, the red carpet, catering. All right, we're going to do just 2 podcasts. But still, it's Clutch. It's coming. I can't wait for March to be here because that's when Clutch's Earth Rocker comes out. And it's new Clutch because that just makes me feel all wonderful. But until then, he is the Metal Coop. I am the mandated reporter, Mr. Mark Radulich, and frankly, I'm mortified. We shall see you again. Until then, be well, be safe, and behave.